in our waters down here, we tie them up in smaller versions, as you can see here by this little chartreuse critter I've got in my hand. We find this very, very effective on the salmon around in the surf, and even if you're in the back of a boat out in the bay here, or even in any estuary sort of situation, and you've got a burley down, a burley trail going out, and you get those fish feeding around in the burley trail, this little thing jerked back, threw it off the back of a boat, will give you a surprise or two, I can assure you. One of the, I think, famous flies that come into this series here in Australia was one that was developed up north by a guy by the name of Graham White. It's called the pink thing. And it's just taken off, and this fly's getting itself a reputation all over the place. Not only works up there in the Northern Territory, believe you me, it works just about anywhere it's used. Simple little fly to make, so let's get into it. Once again, I'm going to use a size 1/0. Get a little bit of silk, place it on the back as normal. I like to put a good bit of silk on because that allows you to get your materials on there, and they sit in that silk and they grip to it. If you just tie it straight onto a lot of bare steel, they can slip around, and we don't want that to happen. Let's select some of our feathers, because the tying of this fly is very, very similar to Lefty's deceiver. We just need to select some feathers here with a nice little bit of bulk to them, so that they give us a nice profile when tied in. Here we go. Looking better. Another one, just to be on the safe side. That gives us a half a dozen. That'll be good. Let's tie these in, just like we did with old Lefty's deceiver. Set them on top, tie them down. Tie that in, just to make it nice and secure. Now we're going to get some natural grizzle hackle, which is beautifully mottled. Just have a look at that feather. Beautiful, isn't it? Have a look at that. We tie one of these down either side. It's a little bit lighter than that grizzle, the dark grizzle that we used before. Making sure that the tips are roughly around about the same either side. Next we're going to come up and we're going to tie in a pair of eyes. Now what I've got here is some bead chain that I've cut up, and I'm going to use some silver ones in this instance. And you can see that they're still joined together by the little metal bar. All I've done is got a bit of bead chain, cut them up into pairs, and that'll make the eyes. Simply slip them top of the hook like so, and tie in figure of 8. What I mean by figure of 8 is a few turns that way, then come back and do a few turns that way, so that it's crisscrossing everything and just holds everything in place. Get that in nice and secure, because we don't want that to move around. Secure them in so that they're really perpendicular to the shank. You want to keep them nice and even too. Just check and have a look, make sure that it's sitting correct before you seal it all in. Let's just secure that a bit. Now let's get a little bit more of this bucktail. We don't have to worry about a body in this fly, because it's the white will do it just nice that we've got there. Let's even those fibers up. Let's tie this in underneath. Secure that in. Notice that I'm well back from the eyes. Another little bit of bucktail in on top. So that it covers the fly up just nicely. Let's trim that away now. Let's get a little bit of flashy business going here. We can get a little bit of crystal hair put in there. Some people like to put in a little bit broader type material, but I don't know if it's necessary as long as we've got that glint and that flash. Let's spread that around. It's pretty well even. Just kind of veils the whole fly there. The next thing we do is we get ourselves a saddle. These saddles have been dyed hot pink for us. That's the sort of feather I like. A little bit of the good soft marabou down the back. The fibres are long enough to create a nice collar on it. We'll clean away a little bit at the back end here. Just a little bit of that stem. There we go. Clean a little bit of that away. We can tie that in. Tie it in on top, secure it. Winding around at the back of your, shall we say, the back of the head section. They're slowly working towards the eyes. There we go. Just wind that around as we get closer to the eyes there. Fill up a little bit more of that space, and we can tie that off. Hold all the fibers back so that you can get your silk right in there without tangling up too much of the loose fibers. That away. Cure it. You're in business. One fabulous little pink thing. Let's just tie that off. If you want to, you can put a little bit of epoxy over. That'll help secure the threads so that sharp teeth don't go wrecking them. But you can imagine that pulsating through the water. Yeah, it's really got to attract some attention. Well, bunny is simply made up of two strips of zonker rabbit skin that's been cut into thin strips, like so. You can tie double bunnies up into any colour combination that you that you choose. The sample I've got here is white and green, as you can see. I've got another one here. This one we've actually put a spun deer hair head on and some of those goggle eyes on it. But this one is white with scintilla grey rabbit on top. A little bit of flashaboo or crystal hair down the side, and that kind of just gives it that extra bit of life and makes it all that more effective. Colour combinations, it's up to your imagination. What we're going to do is we're going to do an olive green and white, and we'll leave it at that and see how she comes up. Wish me the best of luck, because it's degree of difficulty, a little bit, but I think we'll get through it. Let's get rid of that rubbish down there, and we can start making this little fly. Mate, I'm going to be making up on a 800S, a Tiemco 800S, size 2.0. Good, 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 good. And we can get into this. First of all, let's get ourselves a piece of zonker strip. Pick a bit of zonker strip that's got plenty of fibre on it. You want lots of fluff and lots of fibre on it. You want a little bit of depth into it. Let's get our hook here and let's lay it on. Just let's have a look. That's going to be a bit too long, but that doesn't matter. We can trim this back afterwards. What we need to do is we need to slice I'm going to take a little bit off this end here because that's a little bit thin, and you'll see what I'm doing in a sec. Get rid of that. Right. You'll notice the width of the strip compared there. I wanted that wider bit, and you'll see why when I get the old scalpel out in a sec, because we've got to do a little bit of an operation here. And I've got myself a cutting board. To do this directly on this table, you can imagine what my wife would do with me. She'd cut my throat. Let's have a look at this skin. What I want to do is put a little slit. I want to gauge it so that slit comes in about here, in the center, and just run a little cut through there like so. Then I can fit the hook through it. So let's just put the point of the hook down through there, and that'll sit underneath, because what's going to happen is I'm going to pull it up a little bit and tie that in. And you can see that I've got the bottom half. Whoops, let me hang on to that again. Tease that out. And you can see that I've got the bottom half of this double bunny in place already. Let's put the hook into the vise. Let's tie. You can add a little lead weight to this if you wish. And I'd run the lead weight along there now, but by the time this gets wet, it sinks quite readily. So let's get that and tie that in underneath the eye there. We've hooked it up, we can tie it in. There we go. That's got that in nice and secure. Now comes the messy bit. I went down the shop before and I purchased myself some hobby glue. It dries, touch dry in about 60 seconds, which means I don't have to hang around and wait for ages. It's clear, so I don't have a stain problem or anything else like that. Yeah, it's a good little glue. It'll do the trick. What we've got to do is stick these two bits together. Now I'm going to get a bit of the green. Cut off a piece of green about the same length. There we go. And that can be tied in on top. Just like so. Get my cutting board back into action here, I think, guys. Get a little bit, just lay it on the skin. Try not to get this onto the rabbit hair if you can. You can imagine the sort of mess it's going to make if you do. You don't need very much, just enough so that it'll adhere to the top half. That's all you need. There we go. Let's place this on top. Do it all carefully. A couple of turns there, and it should just sit down beautifully onto the other piece. There we go. Have a look at that. Did we do it or did we not? Let's have a look. It's looking pretty good. Close it up around the shank of the hook. Press. They say this stuff takes off in 60 seconds. So let's see if it's a fact, huh? Let's continue to work here. Let's build up a little bit of a head. Now we're going to tie in some, what have we got here? A shimmer flash. We're going to put a piece of this down each side, just to open up this plastic bag a little bit so I can get at it. And we'll cut off a couple of strips of shimmer flash. There's one. Give me you. Get another bit that's reasonably straight. There we go. We want to hook that down the side, like that. Tie that bit in. There we go. You can't see that side, but I can. Let's do it this one. Let's just have a look at that, make sure that we're pretty well down the middle of it. It's looking almost good enough to eat. Just want to secure that head there a little bit more. Now, we've got to put these eyes on. I'm going to do a bit of a trick here, guys. Let's have a look. This stuff is called Zonker lure tape, and it comes in block form like so. You can cut it off into little bits and pieces as you wish. I'm going to just come down like so. Cut out a chunk like that. Cut off a bit like so that I can wear it. I'm leaving the sticky back on here. I'm going to cut around and create a little bit of a half circle and come back in sharply like so. What I'm going to try and create here is a little bit of a teardrop type shape, so that I can lay this down the side of this fly. Let's take away the backing plate, because we do not need that. Tie that one onto that side. Got that one in. Let's get our other one here and see if we can create the same sort of monster here, huh? Kind of measure it just to make sure that I'm trying to keep them roughly about the same size. It looks terrible if they're too far out of kilter with each other. And tie that one in. Good side. I can tie those in and secure them. That's not quite the eyes. What I want to do now is just finish this off. We're going to get one of these little gold stick-on eyes here. There we go. We're going to take one of these off, and we're going to stick that right on there. You've got to be careful how you go with this, because really you've only got one chance of making it right. Oh, looking good. Alright, let's take this off here and wind this in to secure that at the nose. Turns. Let's tie it off. And I think that's a little double bunny that Scotty would be proud of. Last thing we'll do is get our head set cement. Get that right into that silk. And so, and there is a little double bunny that is just so pretty. And do they work? Ooh. Believe me, Scotty really hit on something when he put together this little pattern. The next group of flies in the series is what we call epoxy body flies. These have really come to life in the last few years, I suppose, with people playing around with these two-part epoxy mix. One of the most popular on the market is a product called Devcon. It comes either in the tube, as does Araldite, or You can buy it in the bottle if you're making a lot of epoxy flies or epoxy heads on your flies. It's a 5-minute epoxy. I think the big advantage of this stuff is that it dries clear, and both parts are clear. And that's a big advantage over, say, a product like Araldite, where you've got one of the tubes is clear and the other one has got a yellowish tint to it. It never seems to dry totally clear, where this stuff does. Dries in 5 minutes, and it works very, very well. We normally use these things, this sort of stuff, to cover the heads of our flies, and I'm going to hold up this little, what we call a little bend back, where we've got 2 little flies here. You can see what we've done with the head of the flies here. We've coated them in an epoxy resin, and that goes rock hard. Yet it's impervious to teeth, and it helps the fly last and last and last. Plus it builds up the head and gives it a good glassy translucent look, and it features the colours that you've placed into the head of your fly as well. This is a little white bait pattern that I made up, where I've covered the body with epoxy. You'll notice how it kind of holds the tail fibres in line and makes the whole thing look very, very fishy. The epoxy is very, very hard, very brittle as a matter of fact. It won't break, I suppose brittle is the wrong word to use, but it's very, very solid. I suppose one of the advantages is that it's impervious to teeth and those sorts of problems that some of our fish have. But one of its disadvantages is the fact that it is hard. It doesn't feel right. They swim well, they do everything like they should, but, you know, some people say, hey, I'd like to make it feel a little bit better. Well, we've got another product that we can use, and you might see this written up in some of the books. It's called silicone. And I've tied up this little pattern here. I've coated the body in the silicone. It stays soft and pliable, as you can see. It solves that problem we were talking about of maintaining a nice, soft, natural feel to the fly. It holds the fibres nice and neatly so that they've got that profile of a little fish pattern. But it's opaque. If you have a look at silicone, when it comes out of the tube, it's not clear. It's slightly discoloured. It's a milky appearance to it. That ends up in the finished product too. But I was down the hardware the other day and I saw this stuff. Another Selleys product. It's called All Clear. It's a cold polymer sealant, and it in turn dries and reacts just like silicone, but it's clear. When it dries clear, and it enhances the colours of the materials that you've got on your fly. Again, it stays soft and pliable. It takes around about 72 hours for it to set. That's one of the problems, but then again, so does silicone. But it does get a firm surface over it within 5 or 10 minutes, which becomes really touch dry, but it takes quite a few days to set. So if you're going to tie up a batch of these sorts of flies, you want to be able to put them somewhere where they're not going to be disturbed for a while and leave them for a few days and then come back and take them fishing with you. Huge advantages with this. They look like a fish, they feel like a fish, and they swim like a little fish. It's got to add up the fish in the bag to me. I don't know, but it's just a lot of logic. Let me show you how they're made. I'm going to tie these on a Tiemco 811S size 2. It's a smaller hook than the last one we used. Once again, it's stainless steel, which makes it impervious to Mr. Rust. Let's slap that in the vise. Let's put on a little bit of soap down the back end here. Now what I'm going to use for a body on this is there's a lot of things you could use. You can use mylars and all sorts of materials, which we'll be talking about a little later. But I've got some old-fashioned fishing nylon here. This is around about 20-25 pound break and strain. We'll tie in a length of this. We take that right along the body. You can see we'll support that a bit. Come back to close to above our barb. Get back up to just short of the eye. That'll do us beaut. Then we can wind this around. We want to try and make this as even as possible so that we've got no gapes. And the beauty about this nylon is that it is just so strong. Let's just get this done, and then we're in business. We can tie off. There we go. We can cut that away. Now I'm going to get a little bit of this polar hair. I'm going to tie this in as a base to the fly. If you wanted to tie a little bit in underneath, you could. I just wanted to create a little bit of bulk, that's all. Now we're going to talk about what I call layering. That's in tying this stuff on in layers. And let's just tie this in. Just coming back a little bit past the bend, and that's our first layer. Tie that on, secure it. Clip that off. Back. Let's get our next color. Always remember when you're creating little bait fish patterns that they're lighter underneath and they get darker on top. So we'll get into a little bit of the flashy stuff straight off. We'll get a bunch of this. It's very soft, very mobile, this stuff, which is great because it swims around a lot. Helps the fly shimmer. We'd rather not have it pulsate, I'd rather have it shimmer than pulsate. Now this layer is going to be a whisker longer than the first layer. See the profile we're getting already? We can clip that off. Get rid of some of this rubbish here because we're going to get a build up like you wouldn't believe if we don't. We can put that aside. I'm going to get a little bit of this, what's it called, electric blue. Let's get a little bit of this. Once again, tie it in, and let's layer it again, a whisker longer than its previous layer. There we go. Now we can chip it off. It's almost good enough to eat. Get rid of that. Now, let's get a little bit of this holographic stuff. I'll layer this over the top. Don't particularly want it that long, but we just want it a little bit more than our previous layer, just a whisker. So we get that nice sort of tiered effect without it being blunt and sharp at the end. Let's build up our head a little bit here. Shaping it off. Now, I'm going to show you another little trick. I like to put a bit of colour into my heads. So I'm going to get a little bit of fluoro pink floss. I'll wind this a little bit, just like so. I think this replaces the old gill cover too, or gill flare, or whatever you like to call it, a little bit of red and as if the gills are a little bit flared or bleeding. Let's come back down close to the eye. Wrap this around. When this is hit with the epoxies, ooh, looks good. Oops, a bit of a slip. Pick that up. We can now cut that away. And I can tie off down there, and I am covered. I've come forward a little bit far there, but not enough to cause us any real concern. Tie that off. Now, to be able to put an epoxy body over this, I need to take a close look at how I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and get all the fibres back that I want, with the dark one sitting on top. Nice. This is where you need, I think, more fingers than what you've got. Come right back to the end of the body, put a few turns of silk around like so. Don't cut the tag off, let the tag finish. Turn it around, have a look. That's looking real good. That's looking all right. So we need to do a little bit of trick stuff here, guys. 1, 2, 3 turns, and we can snip that off. Now with that tag in a moment, if I hold that at the back there like so, and I hope you can see it there, I'm going to be able to remove that a little bit later. What we're going to do now is make ourselves a bit of room, and we're going to coat this with a little bit of this Sally's All Clear. Let's break that. See the difference in the colour straight away, can't you? Let's just leave that there for a sec, because there's another little product I want to show you. This stuff is called Kodak Photo Flow. All right? This stuff is magic. It's going to let us work this copolymer mix. I'll put a bit on without it, and you can see just what the problem we're going to encounter. And we can slip that on, and it gets all gooey and sticky. And how can we shape that so it looks good? Well, let's get this right around here. Get it on. Look how the copolymer mix is already lifting that, the colours of that crystal hair and the sparkle flash and all that sort of stuff. Really enhances it. That's looking good. Don't know if we need all that much, we can come back to it. Now, this stuff. There's a hell of a lot in the jar there. It cost me $10.95. I bought it down at the Kodak film shop. They got it in for me, to be honest. But all you do is you get your stick, you dip it in. I did read in one book where they say you put a little bit on your finger, but they do suggest that you avoid contact with the skin where possible. You saw what happened when I tried to put this on. It stuck to the stick and everything else. Well, look at this. It doesn't stick, does it? And you can mold and shape and make that body nice and smooth. Pull a bit down. You can create the sort of body that you want. Take it back towards you, a few turns of silk there. And it makes a material that's almost impossible to work with really workable. The beauty of it is it stays soft. If you feel it catching or picking up on the stick, all you've got to do is dip it back in the bottle again. Try and remember your fish shape. There we go. Now, just about got all that done. So I can now take off my silk that's been holding all this together. There we go. Isn't that magical? 3 or 4 minutes and that there will have a cured outer edge on it, and it'll just stay like that forever and a day. Another thing you can do now at this stage is to look along the fly, like I'm doing here now, to make sure that it's even. You haven't got too much of your copolymer mix on one side than on the other side, so if you can pat it in so that you get a good swim pattern with this fly. There we go. Good stuff. Now, would you believe, we've got another bonus here. While it's drying, we don't have to worry about it as long as we don't touch it. We're in business. I'm going to get a size 2 this time. Silver and black eyes. I'll take a little one off there and stick him on side of my pink head. Just like so. Get another one. Do the other side. You've got to be careful not to try and touch your body doing this. You don't want to mess it up. I want to talk now about putting the epoxy on the head of this fly. For the last few minutes, I've had the DevCon. I've had that sitting in some hot water. Victoria's climate during the winter here can get a little bit chilly, but it can get chilly anyway just the same. And if you've got to start using this stuff in a coolish climate, if you just, got a tissue here, if you just warm it up a little bit, thins out and it flows beautifully. Not only does it flow beautifully, but when you go to mix it, it blends. I'm not going to put a lot in there. I just want enough to be able to do the head of this fly. I'm just putting a little dab in. Now with the hardener. There we go. Put about, you've got to try and get exactly the same amount. If you don't, the fly, or the surface of the fly, the head, will always remain a little bit sticky. And it'll always feel tacky, you know. Mix it up well, but if you have made a bit of a boo-boo and added too much of one and not enough of the other, and the head does stay a little bit sticky, let it dry, let it set. A good 5-10 minutes, you'll know if it's going to be tacky or not. And coat it with some vinyl cement or nail polish, clear nail polish. You'll find that that'll set over the top of the epoxy and will eliminate that tacky problem. Now let's spread a little bit of this around here so that and we can get over onto, you can pour this stuff back over onto the copolymer coating. It doesn't seem to affect it at all. And what I was saying about that running business, now this is going to run for a couple of minutes, and we would like to keep that as even as possible. And we've got this little machine, which is a rotary dryer. The head's going to dry, like I said, in 2 or 3 minutes it'll be touch dry, but you really don't want to touch it. I've also found with these, whether it be araldite, whether it be DevCon or whatever you use, try and keep your fingers off it for at least a good 48 hours. Somehow the heat from your fingers kind of changes the colour, makes it go dull and uninteresting. If you want to get that crystal clear vibrance, keep it going, that is. Don't touch it. Just leave it. It's hard not to do. I mean, you always want to touch it and see if it's dry and all that sort of stuff, but forget it. It's not worth it. Just leave it on your drying post and come back and have a look at it tomorrow, and you'll be a lot more happy with the finished product of your fly. Let's get a little hook this time. I'm going to go for a Tiemco 800S, size 4. Once again, a stainless steel critter. Let's put in the vise and let's start work. Let's make a crazy Charlie. Right, let's get our silk. First, what we're going to do is tie on some eyes. You've got to have eyes. And what we're going to tie on this time, guys, is, I should say guys and gals, shouldn't I? Is silver chain eyes again. Actually, these are good ones. I don't know where I got them. But I suppose if you look around the haberdashery shops and this sort of stuff, you can pick them up. These are actually chrome ones. They throw off a lot of light. They look good. You'll notice that I'm setting the eyes back well from the eye of the hook. That's because with Crazy Charlies we've got tie and everything in front. It becomes like a bit of a head and the eyes come back behind. Actually, many guys argue that Crazy Charlies look like a little shrimp pattern. And you know as well as I do, we've got a lot of shrimps out here. I need some more fishing nylon, which I can now take the silk back to above my starting point, which is above the bark. Place my nylon on, tied in. Cure it so it doesn't move around on me when I wrap. That's good. I'm going to put a little bit of an underbody on this. I'm going to just hook that down around there for a sec. I'm going to get a bit of this. And there we go. Nice hot orange. Get a couple of strands. We'll tie a few strands in, like so. Come back up to where I want my body to finish. Let's wrap this around. This will give me beaut hot orange. Underbody. Let's build this up over and around that hump. Put it tight so that everything becomes translucent. There we go. I want as much of that underbody to show through as possible, please. Notice how the clear fishing nylon is once again enhancing the colour of that nylon. Makes it pretty well indestructible. Tie that off. I've known some guys have put a coat of epoxy resin over the top of that once again, and just maybe to give it a little bit more bulk. It's a trick you can do if you want. What we're going to do now is we're going to get a couple of these saddle hackles here, and I'm going to carefully pick out a couple that have got a nice shape to them. Let's have one like, yeah, looks a bit better. A little fellow in there. Let's have a look at you. You're looking good. Put those back to back, similar to what we did with the lefty's deceivers earlier. Tie those underneath like that. Just coming back past the bend. Take it up and tie it in under, like so. Just so they sit there. You can put one of them either side of the hook. They can be removed. Build that head up just a little bit. There we go. We're doing all right. Now, What I want to do is just put in a couple of strands of this a little bit longer. Just a few strands, that's all. Tie some on that side. And tie those on that side, bring them all down under. And they can be cut off. They can be tied off. And pick up your fibres. There we go. You can put epoxy resin on that if you wish, or you can treat it with a little bit of head cement. Let's come back here now, let's have a look at all these fibres. You'll notice just how sparse this fly is. There's not much to it at all. Like I said, they feel it represents a little shrimp pattern. If it does, so be it. I mean, why should we question something that works? A little head cement in there. It'll really seal that up a lot. There we go. It's done. The eyes kind of off-balance the hook, and quite often they'll swim around like so. Keeps them up out of the grass and out of the weeds. That is a little crazy Charlie. The first fly we're going to tie in this series is a fly called Lefty's Deceiver. It was developed back in 1958 by a guy by the name of Lefty Cree. But I suppose Lefty's Deceiver nowadays would be classified as one of the great all-round flies ever developed in saltwater fly fishing. The materials that we're going to use are readily available, but I'd like to go through them in a little bit of detail before we actually start tying the fly. First of all, we're going to be using saddle hackles in the construction of this fly. This is a saddle patch, as it's called. It comes off the back of a rooster. These feathers down here, they're ideal for saltwater flies. They're soft, they're pliable, they absorb water readily, and they've got that great shape that gives a little bit of bulk to the fly itself. We're going to be using about a half a dozen white. We're going to have a couple of the grizzle down along the side. We're going to have some bucktail coming down over the top of it all, a little bit of chartreuse on top, and a little bit of silver twist there, or silver braid as it's called, for the body. And we're going to mix in a little bit of crystal flash as well. So let's get into it, and I'll show you how it's all done. First of all, we're going to get ourselves a size 1/0 hook. The Lefty's Deceiver can be tied up in any size. You can tie them up large, you can tie them small, you can fish them in dirty water, clear water. It really doesn't matter. Let's put the hook in the vise and get this fly going. First of all, let's tie on a little bit of silk, running on down towards the back of it, starting as normal above the barb of the hook. Cut away your tag. Now I'm going to select around about a half a dozen of these saddle hackles here. Let's have a little look. I don't want to get them too long because I don't want to get out of proportion here for the size of the hook that we're tying. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. What's that little fellow? Yeah, that's okay. Another one, and I reckon we'll be just about right there. Here we go. Let's get 3 of them facing that way. Let's get the next 3 back together again. Keep your best looking feathers to the outside too. It's going to make for a better looking fly. You want to be able to put them together as if you're like clasping your hands in prayer. Like so. 3 coming that way and 3 coming that way. Let's check that for length. That's about right. Don't want it too long. Secure that. Just check it that side before we do. We've got one feather come out of place there a little bit. That's looking good. we can trim that away. I'm not going to cut them off too close to the hook shank, and look at that mess we make. Typical of Australian saltwater flies, you make a lot of mess. The reason I'm going to wind this down along the body here now, and I want to try and avoid a build-up when we go to wind the body on back at this end. You'll see what I mean when we get there in a moment. Those fluffy bits. Now I want to pick up some of these grizzle hackles here. We take a good wide feather out. I suppose not quite as wide as the feather that we used from the saddles. We just want this to go down the sides, just to give it a little bit of texture and colour alternative there. Next one, tie him down about the same length so the tips are even, and we can tie him in on that side. They kind of envelope the whole lot. We can trim them away. Get rid of that. Now we're going to get a little bit of crystal flash. It's beautiful stuff, this. It glints, it flashes. You can see it doing its trick there in the light. You can imagine what that looks like when it picks up a bit of sunlight coming through the water. Gives those flies a little bit of life, you know. And to put life into a fly is, I suppose, one of the secrets of fly tying. There we go. Let's tie that in. Over the top of the lot. There we go. Just like so. Secure it down. Get rid of the unwanted bits. Back to our starting point. Then we get a little bit of this silver braid. Just enough to be able to form the body there. About 6 inches of it, I suppose. Sit that on top of your body. Notice I'm taking that the full length of the body section up to that 2/3 back from the eye, winding that in. This is going to help me create now is a bit of a level body. If I'd have just tied everything off, as I was explaining earlier, back there, I'd have a big bulge that I'd have to get over before, while winding the body before I got to the end of it here. So have a look and see what happens. And we can wind this along now. We're getting a reasonably nice, neat body all the way down. Just like to flatten it a little bit too. Till we get to the end here, then we get a bit of a drop off, but that doesn't matter because we've completed that body section. I'd rather have it there than at the back end where it's all exposed. Trim that off. Looking pretty good. We're going to get a little bunch of this bucktail here. Have a look and see how much I've got there. We don't need a lot. We don't want to flood the whole fly. Just enough to engulf the fly, but still be able to see through it, so there's got an air of translucency about it. Spread those around just so that they kind of come all the way around the fly here. Spread it out. Now, trim it away before you put the top half on, because if you end up with a whole heap of bucktail fibers there to cut off, it's very difficult to get a good neat finish. That's securely locked in. Let's just check the other side. This here how that's looking. It's looking pretty good. We're going to get another bunch now about the same size and tie that off over the top of the fly. There we go. And we're in business. It's looking pretty good. You'll notice that you get that translucency. You can still see the body through the fly. It's looking good. Let's just pack that in a little bit. Take our silk back to where we want. Now we've just about finished this bug. We're going to tie a little bit of this chartreuse over the top. It's a favourite colour of mine. I just love it. It works. And I think that's why I like it so much. But anyway, let's tie a little bit of that on top. just like so. Secure it, then we can trim it away. There we go. Let's just see if that's nice and even. It sure is. We can trim that away. Get in nice and close. The last thing you want is these fibers hanging out over the eye of the hook. You've got to try and trim them away. This is where you definitely need a good pair of scissors. Let's get up and over all those ends, cover them in. We're only going to partially complete the head of this fly because we're going to be concentrating on a segment in a moment using resins, and we'll coat the whole lot with the resin, and it sets rock hard and protects the fly. And because it's got to be all set up and it gets a bit messy, you're better off doing a batch rather than just doing them one at a time. What we are going to do now, just to touch this off, is add a pair of stick-on eyes. Let's get a couple of these out. Little sticky fellas off. Squeeze. They're not going to stay there forever. They'll come off if you start casting with them unsecured. But a little bit of epoxy resin in a moment. That'll fix that problem forever and a day. Get a little bit of headset cement. Dab a little bit into the silks. It soaks right in immediately. That's what I love about this stuff. It's good and thin, and it seals it all and just prepares it for when you come back with the epoxy resin in a moment to make sure that it'll never come undone on you. And there you go. One lefty deceiver with a touch of chartreuse. The last fly in this series is a clouser minnow. Now, a clouser minnow has been around for a long, long time. It was invented by a guy by the name of Bob Clouser, who runs a tackle shop up there in Pennsylvania, but that's by and by. His fly has become famous. It's, here's one here that I tied up. It works equally as well in freshwater as it does in saltwater. Matter of fact, it's deadly in freshwater. In a lot of areas in America, it's been actually banned. They just don't want it around. It'll bounce along the bottom. It does swim with the hook upwards, which keeps it from snagging and doing all those rotten things we don't want it to do. You can weight the hook with a little bit of lead. I'd wrap that around, right around the hook, because the actual lead eyes that are on this fly, they're the ones that off balance it and turn it upside down. That's why you tie the fly with the lighter colors on top of the hook and the darker colors underneath, directly back to front to the way you would normally tie a streamer type fly. So that's the way it's going to swim. So you'll have your darker colors on top, as you could imagine. For this, you can tie them up in any size that you want. You can tie them up on little hooks, you can tie them up on big hooks. It works in any size. It's like the lefty's deceiver. It's one of those flies that should always be carried. Deadly, especially if you want to get down deep with it and you've got a bit of a weedy area over grasses and this sort of stuff. Sometimes the eyes do get caught up a little bit on it, but nothing serious. You don't lose your fly. You can get your fly back easy. I've picked TMCO 811S size 4 for this. As I said, you could go larger if you want. You could go smaller if you want. Actually, Bob Clouser actually ties them down using rabbit fur for the little ones, the long guard hairs, raccoons, another fibre he uses, as well as fox. And like I said, he uses those on freshwater. So there's a lot of scope with this little fly. Let's get into it. What we need is some lead eyes. Now I've got a whole box full of eyes here, all different sorts of stuff. We're going to get some of these little lead weighted eyes here. These have been silvered, so we'll get one of those out. Get the silk. And we're going to tie this on back from the eye a bit. Come back up again. Give yourself a good bit of silk there so that the fly can grip. Get your scissors, remove the tag end and tie in your weight. I think this will do the job beautifully. Tie it in well back from the eye because you've got to tie everything on in front of it, so you need that little bit of room. Once again, and make sure that it's nice and even. Not like so. Come back up over your eyes and then tie it down in front. Yep, it's going to come back up just nice. Let's get a bunch of crystal here. We can be a little bit generous with this stuff because it just looks so good. And it really does, as we said before, add that little bit of life to your fly. Once again, tie that in just like we did. Secure it and bring it up and tie it off in front of your hook. We're going to be pulling all that back now. So let's take our silk back behind our eyes. This is important because if we pull this over before we tie it down, we're going to be in all sorts of trouble, aren't we? Let's just tie that down now. We can get rid of that little hair that's sticking out there that doesn't look good. It's not going to affect the fly at all, but there we go. That's the underside of the fly done. Don't forget that layering principle that we talked about. That's the crystal here is a second layer under, so it's going to be a bit longer than the first. Now, some people at this stage will take the fly out and turn it upside down to be able to put a bit more material underneath. That's okay if you want to, but you don't have to do it that way. In many instances, the clouser minnow here was just tied with that, the fibers over the back of the hook, just a bunch underneath. But I'm not going to do it that way, I'm going to do it this way. I'll show you. It's just an option that I'm giving you. We're going to take a bit of green, and we'll get a bunch of this green. Bucktail again, which is nice and fine. Discolored rivers and estuaries and this sort of stuff up north. Very effective on the barramundi is one. We've tied it up in various forms since this fly was first invented many years ago back in the States. In actual fact, here in our waters down here, we tie them up in smaller versions, as you can see here by this little chartreuse critter I've got in my hand. We find this very, very effective on the salmon around in the surf, and even if you're in the back of a boat out in the bay here, or even in any estuary sort of situation, and you've got a burley down, a burley trail going out, and you get those fish feeding around in the burley trail, this little thing jerked back, threw it off the back of a boat, will give you a surprise or two, I can assure you. One of the, I think, famous flies that come into this series here in Australia was one that was developed up north by a guy by the name of Graham White. It's called the pink thing, and it's just